and thank you for joining me here today at Why the Book Wins, where I compare books with their movie adaptations. My name is Laura, and today I am talking about Charlie and the Chocolate Factory by Roald Dahl, published in 1964, and I am comparing it with two movie adaptations, the first one being the 1971 movie directed by Mel Stewart titled Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, and then also the 2005 movie directed by Tim Burton titled Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. And this, of course, is the story of Charlie Bucket, who finds a golden ticket which gives him admission into Willy Wonka's super secret magical chocolate factory, and this experience ends up changing both of their lives forever. And I'm actually not really going to have a spoiler-free section to this. I usually start out with like spoiler-free reviews of the book and movie, but I'm not really going to do that in today's video. I'm switching it up. As far as spoiler-free thoughts, all I'm going to say is that I have fond memories of all three of these, and so I'm very biased because I have so much nostalgia because I read a lot of Roald Dahl when I was a kid. And then the 71 movie, I grew up watching that and have always loved it. And then the 2005 movie, I saw that when I was a teenager and I really liked that too. And there's parts that my family would quote a lot. So the 2005 movie, it can be very forgettable. Like some scenes are just very forgettable, and it's not necessarily a movie that sticks with you. And I don't think it feels as magical as the book and the 71 movie. However, ultimately I would still recommend it, and it is the more faithful of the two movies. So if you want something closer to the book, Charlie and the Chocolate Factory would be the one to watch. But yeah, nonetheless, I would recommend all of these. I'm not like the biggest Roald Dahl fan, even though I grew up reading so many of his books, and I do even have my critiques as far as this one goes. Nonetheless, it's still a fun one. But yeah, from here on out, we're just gonna get straight into the plot details, which means we will be getting into spoilers. I'm kind of just assuming that most people know this story, so I'm not really worried about skipping the spoiler-free section, because even if you haven't read this book or seen the movies, it's one of those stories that I feel like everybody just kind of knows what happens. So I'm just getting right into it. And we are starting with Charlie Bucket. So in all versions, Charlie lives with his mother and his four grandparents, and his grandparents all stay in bed all day long. They never get out of bed. And in the book and in the 2005 movie, we also have Charlie's father, and he works at a toothpaste factory putting the lids on toothpaste. But in both versions, he is laid off because the toothpaste company gets a machine. They buy a machine which can put the lids on, and so his dad is laid off. And then the 2005 movie has this added detail at the end where his dad gets a new job at the factory fixing the machine that had replaced him. So that is exclusive to the 2005 movie, but in the book, he does have a dad, and the dad does work at a toothpaste factory. And then in all versions, Charlie's birthday is coming up, and every year for his birthday, his gift is a Wonka bar because they are so poor that is the only time he gets one. And like a few days before his birthday is when Willy Wonka makes the announcement that he has placed 5 golden tickets in random Wonka bars throughout the entire world, and whoever finds these tickets are granted a tour through his chocolate factory, which has been closed for a really long time, and they also get a lifetime supply of chocolate. And in the book and the 2005 movie, the ticket also says that out of the 5, one of them will get a grand prize, but it's a mystery as to what this grand prize is. And yeah, so in all versions, his birthday rolls around and he gets his Wonka bar and he opens it, and it is just a bar of chocolate. There is no golden ticket. In the 71 movie, he opens it and he jokes that the ticket is inside, but then he's like, oh, like I really fooled you, didn't I? And I feel like, I mean, there's a sadness to Charlie in all of these versions, but in the 71 movie, there's that part where he plays the joke on them, but it's like not a funny joke. It's just kind of like an uncomfortable, sad joke, right? And then afterwards, like when a few kids have found tickets, he goes to tell his mom being like, hey, like, the third person found the ticket. There's only 2 left in the world, or 1 left in the world, however many it was at this point. And she's like, okay. And he's like, well, I just thought you would like to know because a lot of people are interested, including myself. Like, I'm really interested. And he's like, and if you want to know who's going to be the last person to find it, like, it won't be me. Like, don't worry, I'm not going to be the one to win it. And so he almost seems even more discouraged in the 71 movie, I think, in some ways. We also have the teacher in the 71 movie, and he is not in any of the other versions, but there's a part where the teacher is asking how many kids opened up Wonka bars in order to find a ticket, and one kid says like 100, another kid says like 150, and then he asks Charlie, and Charlie's like 2. And the teacher is like 200. And then Charlie's like, not 200, just 2. And so, yeah, I feel like we just get more scenes, just seeing how poor they are and how sad he is and how much he wants it, I guess, which is actually kind of a theme that I will be getting into later in this video. But anyway, I'm getting ahead of myself. Which I said he opens 2 bars because Grandpa Joe, in all versions, he like brings Charlie over in the night and he's like, hey, Like, I have some money and I want you to use this to go buy another Wonka bar. So Charlie buys a Wonka bar, he brings it back, the two of them open it together, and it's very suspenseful. But again, it's just the chocolate and no golden ticket. And again, another thing in the 71 movie, after they open this, Charlie says to his grandpa, he's like, I bet the golden ticket make the chocolate taste terrible. And again, it's just one of those enduring, sad scenes with Charlie. But in the 71 movie, the grandpa has this money, like in the other two versions, it was just his savings. But in the 71 movie, it was the money that he was using to buy tobacco. And it's like, your family is super poor. You're not even working. You just stay in bed all day long. Like, how dare you still be buying tobacco? Like, that is not a habit you should be continuing as your daughter or however they are related. You shouldn't. She's the only one working in this family, along with Charlie in the 71 movie. He's a paper delivery boy. So it's just like, really, Grandpa Joe? You're still smoking tobacco even though your family's super poor and you're doing nothing to help. But yeah, that's what the money had been for in the 71 movie. And then in all versions, the fifth ticket is said to be found by an adult, but then it is later revealed that the adult had forged the ticket, which means there is still one more out there. And at this point, Charlie finds some money in the street, and then he takes it into a shop and he buys a Wonka bar, and he just like devours it because he's so hungry. And then he has money left, so then he's like gonna take it home to his parents, but then he's like just gives in and he's like, actually, I'll do another one. And in the book, he orders like 5 Wonka bars and he's just like scarfing them down. And it's not until like the 5th one that he opens it and it ends up being a golden ticket. And I did like in the book how Roald Dahl had it be, he opens like 6 or 7 chocolate bars before he finds the golden ticket. And so I did like that it didn't happen like right away, because that just wouldn't have been as believable, which in both movie adaptations, it's the 2nd bar he buys. So he finds the money in the street, he buys 1 bar, which he eats super quick, and then he buys a 2nd bar, and the 2nd bar has the golden ticket. And in the book, in the 2005 movie, he sees the golden ticket and people are offering him money for it, but the shop owner is like, hey, leave him alone. And he's like, Charlie, do not sell that ticket, like go straight home. And then when in the 2005 movie, he goes home and he tells them like, hey, I found the golden ticket, but we can't go because people offered me money for this ticket and we need the money more than we need a lifetime supply of chocolate. And this is not in the book. This is exclusive to the 2005 movie, but I liked this scene because then Grandpa George, he tells Charlie, he's like, you know what? The world is full of money and only a dummy would trade this ticket for something as common as money. And he's like, and you're not a dummy, are you? And so I did think that was a great scene in the 2005 movie. And then in the book and in the 2005 movie, Grandpa Joe, they decide he is the one that will go with Charlie. And in the book in the 2005 movie, he just hops out of bed, has no issue whatsoever. He's just super excited and can't wait. And he is just able to get out of bed and walk around. Whereas in the 71 movie, it's a bit more dramatic where he is like having to like carefully learn how to walk again as he gets out of bed. But also in the book, each child could bring 2 adults. And so both movies have it be just one, but in the book, they could bring 2 adults, which makes me wonder, why didn't he bring someone else? He could have brought his mom or his dad. Like, it seems like in the book, he was debating on either his dad or Grandpa Joe going, and they decided on Grandpa Joe, but both could have gone because they were allowed 2 adults. But both movies changed this and it's only 1 adult, which obviously makes sense for casting reasons. It's a smaller cast when you just have it be 1 adult per kid. And then as far as the other 4 children who win the tickets or who find the tickets, this book, like, even though I like it, it's kind of annoying because Roald Dahl was definitely using this book as a platform to share his distaste for things that the younger generations were doing at the time, specifically chewing gum and watching TV. And I just kind of roll my eyes at things like this because, like, guess what, Roald Dahl? When you were a kid, you were doing things that the current adults like didn't like and thought was bad. And it's always going to be that way, right? There's always going to be something that the kids are doing that the adults like think is terrible and they need to stop that, and oh, that's so horrible. And so yeah, that was just kind of an annoying aspect of this book. And like the Oompa Loompas sing songs about each kid as soon as they like are knocked off one by one. But for Violet, who chews gum, and Mike, who watches TV, like Violet's song is literally just about chewing gum, and like it's the story about like why chewing gum is bad, but like he doesn't say why it's bad. Like we kind of get the implication that it's rude, I guess, but it was just kind of like, I don't know, he's showing his distaste for it, but he doesn't really say why. Like he just doesn't like it, but he doesn't really have anything to back up why he doesn't like it, you know? And then with Mike TV, that song is all about how like you need to stop your kids watching TV because it's like turning them into zombies. And instead you should put them in the library where they can read books all day because TV is bad for your imagination. And again, it's just such an old school way to think. Obviously, I'm all about reading books, but I love movies too. And movies don't ruin your imagination. And also, I bet when Roald Dahl was a kid, if he spent all his days reading, I bet adults were like, man, kids are lazy. They're just sitting around reading, right? So it's all relative. So he was so adamantly against TV and gum chewing to the point that it just was kind of annoying. But then you also have the problem where maybe it doesn't age too well because TV and gum chewing, like, I don't know, kids are doing other stuff these days that are more concerning than TV and gum chewing, I guess, you know. But anyway, the 4 children, it's interesting because if you think about it, they can represent 4 of the 7 deadly sins. I don't think he was doing this intentionally though, because I think if he was doing it intentionally, he would have had more kids. That way he could have done all 7. So the fact that there's only 4, I feel like it's just coincidental that they do represent one of the sins. So I thought I would go through and list them. So Charlie Bucket, of course, doesn't count because he is a well-behaved child. But then we have Violet, and she is the one who chews gum. And so she is very rude, but she also, I think pride would be the one for her because she chews this gum nonstop in order to break records so that she can like have that sense of pride being like, oh, I'm so much better than my other friends because I chewed it longer than them. So with her, I'm going to say pride. Plus in the 2005 movie, she's also just into competitions in general and she wants to win everything she does. So definitely in the 2005 movie, I think pride fits her even better than it had in the book. And then we have Mike who watches TV all day long and his would be sloth, I would say, because he just sits in front of the TV. In the book, he likes gangster movies, whereas in the 71 movie, he likes cowboy movies. And then in the 2005 movie, he plays video games. And Veruca is a spoiled brat who wants everything. And so envy would be hers, right? Because if she sees something she doesn't have, she's envious and she has to have it. And then Augustus, of course, you know, he has an insatiable appetite and his is gluttony. And even though the new movie, it did make some changes, like I said, Violet, she was just competed in all sorts of things and always wanted to win. And Mike plays video games rather than watching TV. But I still feel like they could have used this movie as an opportunity to change the kids more and to make it apply to today. And I get like one of the reasons they did this movie was to be more faithful to the book. So to change the kids' backstories would defeat the purpose of having a more faithful adaptation. But nonetheless, I think because this was the second adaptation made, I think it would have been cool to just have some changes where like the overall theme and message and story could be the same, but to find ways to make it apply more to today. Or this was like 2005, so find ways to make it apply to, 18 years ago. But something that is exclusive to the 1971 movie, after each kid finds a ticket, this guy comes up to them and he tells them like, hey, Willy Wonka is working on a candy called a gobstopper. So if you get that and give it to me and tell me about everything you see in the factory, you will become rich. I will make you rich. However, at the end of the movie, we realized that this guy worked for Wonka and it was a test. So he was a fake spy trying to tempt the kids, and Wonka wanted to see like who would give in and who wouldn't, essentially. And this is interesting because people have theorized that in the 71 movie, Willy Wonka like was intentional with who the tickets went to and he knew who would find them because this guy ends up being all around the world. He ends up being wherever the ticket winner is. And so either one, the movie makers did not think about how this was not logistically possible, or 2, Wonka knew where the tickets were going and he was more intentional with it. So it's hard to say which one is true. I kind of feel like the movie makers probably were just like, whatever. They probably just weren't really thinking about it. Because he is there instantly. As soon as certain people find the ticket, he just happens to be right there, which obviously isn't possible unless he knew where the tickets were going to be. So let me know what you think on that. And in the book and in the 2005 movie, we do learn, and the 71 movie, we do learn how there were all of these other candy competitors and they were stealing Wonka's ideas. And this is why Wonka fires all of his employees and he shuts his gates forever. He starts making candy again, but he does not allow anybody in. No one comes in, no one comes out. And it is because people are trying to get his recipes. But to talk about Willy Wonka, part of me, I don't know if I would say that Johnny Depp, who plays Wonka in 2005, or Gene Wilder, who plays him in the 71 movie, I kind of don't think either of them totally embodies the way Willy Wonka was in the book. So for starters, Gene Wilder Wilder. Like his version is a bit too witty and sarcastic, and he's constantly like quoting literature and poetry and things. And he also is just like clearly messing with these people, right? And he's just getting a kick out of messing with them. Whereas in the book and the 2005 movie, to be fair, you never got the vibe that he was messing with them. Like he would say things and confuse them, but he was just being himself and he was just kind of aloof. Whereas yeah, in the Gene Wilder, like he clearly is intentional and is trying to mess with them, you know? And then also in the 2005 movie and in the book, there's a part where they get on the chocolate river in the boat. And in the book we read, "Suddenly, Mr. Wonka, who was sitting on Charlie's other side, reached down into the bottom of the boat, picked up a large mug, dipped it into the river, filled it with chocolate, and handed it to Charlie. 'Drink this,' he said. 'It'll do you good. You look starved to death.' And then Mr. Wonka filled a second mug and gave it to Grandpa Joe. 'You too,' he said. 'You look like a skeleton. What's the matter? Hasn't there been anything to eat in your house lately?' 'Not much,' said Grandpa Joe." And yeah, this part, like, it was just so sweet. When I read this in the book, I was just like, wow, like, he was just like so kind and observant and thoughtful. Gene Wilder does not come across that way. Like, in the end, you see a softer side to him where he is like being kind and nice, but it almost feels jarring in a way because he has not come across that way throughout the entire movie. So yeah, in the book, we kind of see this softer side to him with this scene. And the 2005 also has this scene where he gives them chocolate from the river. And then in the book, when kids are going against what he says, like when Augustus is drinking from the river and he's like, "Wait, stop, you know, that can't be touched by human hands." Or with the gum chewing, he's telling her like, spit it out, spit it out. And he's kind of freaking out when kids are going against what he says. Whereas in the Gene Wilder movie, I mean, he kind of freaks out with Augustus and he runs over there. But then he just is like super calm. Like you can tell he's annoyed and frustrated, but at the same time, he's just kind of like, wow, you know, like whatever, and just being sarcastic. For example, with Augustus, the mom is like freaking out and she's like, "Do something." And he sarcastically is like, "Help, police, murder." Whereas it's funny because that line is in the book, but it is Mrs. Gloop who is like yelling, "Help, police, murder." And it's because she's freaking out and doesn't know what to do. So she's yelling that. But yeah, so the 71 movie, and with Violet chewing the gum, he's just kind of like just waiting for it to go wrong and he doesn't try to stop her. And then also going back to Augustus, there's a part which is in all three versions where Augustus's mom is freaking out and she's like, "He's going to be made into marshmallow." And Wonka is like, "Oh, don't be silly. That's impossible." And she's like, "Why is it impossible?" And he's like, "Because that pipe doesn't lead to the marshmallow room, it leads to the fudge room." And so then she's like, "Well, he's going to be turned into fudge then, and people are going to be eating Augustus flavored fudge." And Wonka's like, "Don't be ridiculous. I would never let that happen." And she's like, "Oh, you wouldn't?" And he's like, "No, he would taste terrible. People wouldn't buy it. It would be horrible for sales." And so it's funny because in the movie, in the 71 movie, he says this line, but again, it seems like he's kind of being sarcastic and messing with her. Whereas in the book and in the 2005 movie, when he's saying that he wouldn't turn Augustus into fudge, not because he's worried about Augustus, but how he wouldn't turn him into fudge simply because it would taste terrible. He just will be very literal at times. And, you know, the 2005 movie shows him being very socially awkward, which is believable, right? He's living so isolated from the world. But yeah, so because of that social awkwardness, he just kind of says things like it is, not realizing how it's coming across. Whereas in the 71 movie, he just seems like he's very sarcastic. And then, of course, each of the bad children are led to their downfall based on whatever bad trait they had. And in my opinion, Veruca was the worst. She was the most annoying. She was such a spoiled brat and so entitled. And yet, like, she has it the best because in the book and in the 2005 movie, Willy Wonka has a room full of squirrels who test nuts. And they like knock on the nuts and see if they're good or bad. And if they're bad, they toss it down the trash chute. And she decides she wants a squirrel. So she walks down there amongst all the squirrels and she tries to pick one up. And instead, they all jump on her. And then one of them knocks on her head to see if she's good or bad. They determine she is bad and they toss her down the trash chute. And then her parents also get pushed down. And so when she leaves the factory, she's just dirty. That's all. Like, that's not a big deal at all, really. In the 71 movie, it's not squirrels, it's eggs that lay like golden eggs or chocolate eggs. And then there's this scale that determines if an egg is good or bad. And once again, she goes out there amongst the geese and she's standing on the scale. It determines that she is bad and she goes down the trash chute. So yeah, in both she gets just sent down a trash chute, and when she comes out of the factory, she's dirty, but that's it. Whereas the other kids, like Mike has it the worst, I would say, because he makes himself tiny when he goes through the TV. And so in the end, they have like stretched him out, and he is now like 10 feet tall and crazy skinny. And then we have Violet, who obviously blew up like a blueberry. And now like she is super like flexible, but she's also blue. And then Augustus now is just like super skinny from being pushed through the pipe. And so, yeah, I feel like Mike had it the worst. And then Violet, you know, she's super flexible and bendy, which would be cool, but she's also blue. And then Augustus, I guess, had it the second best. Like, that's not too bad, I guess. And then Veruca was just dirty, and that's it. And in the 71 movie, we don't see the kids leaving the factory, but in the 2005 movie and in the book, they do see the kids leave the factory, and we see how they all ended up. And also in the 71 movie, Wonka has them sign a contract before they go in the factory, which is funny because as I was reading the book, I was like, man, if this was realistic, like these people would all be suing Willy Wonka for everything he's got. But so I thought it was funny that in the 71 movie, he has them signing a contract first, which makes a lot of sense. But in the end of the 71 movie, Charlie is the last one standing, and he tells him that Charlie and everybody else, like no one is getting a lifetime supply of chocolate like the ticket said they would, because in the contract that they signed, it said that if they broke rules, they would no longer get the chocolate. And he's like, and you all broke rules, so none of you get the chocolate. And speaking of breaking rules, in the 71 movie, the reason he's mad at Charlie is because Charlie and Grandpa Joe stayed behind in the fizzy lifting drink room, and they tried the fizzy lifting drink. And eventually they, you know, like come down from floating around, and they reunite with the group. However, Wonka knows what they did, and so he's still mad at them for disobeying the rules. Whereas this is not the case in the book or the 2005 movie. Willy Wonka talks about fizzy lifting drink in the book, but Charlie and Uncle Joe do not try it. They just continue on with the tour. And so I do wish the 71 movie didn't have that scene, like Charlie and Uncle Joe having the fizzy lifting drink. That's my least favorite part of the movie, and I just don't like that they added that. So yeah, that's one change I really wish they hadn't made. So yeah, at the end of the movie, the 71 movie, Charlie is the last one around, but Wonka is just like, okay, well, you know, head home now, bye. And he goes in his office, and they're like, wait, what? Like, that's it? And so Grandpa Joe, he's like, hey, like, what about Charlie's lifetime supply of chocolate? And that's when, you know, Gene Wilder yells at them, being like, you lose, you drank the fizzy lifting drink, you disobeyed my rules, like, you get nothing. But then, before leaving though, you know, he gave everyone gobstoppers, which Slugworth, the spy, told them like, hey, you give me that gobstopper and I'll make you rich. But then Charlie, before he leaves, he gives the gobstopper back to Wonka, showing that he is not going to betray Willy Wonka. And so after he does this, Willy Wonka then is like, congrats, Charlie, you've done it, you've won. And Charlie is just kind of like, wait, what? And this is when he reveals that Charlie has now like won the factory, essentially. Whereas in the book and in the 2005 movie, as soon as Mike is gone and Willy Wonka sees that Charlie's the last one left, that is when he's like, you've won, congratulations. I had a feeling I knew it would be you. And yeah, from here in all the versions, Willy Wonka then takes them into his glass elevator, and he presses the button that says up and out, and the glass elevator shoots through the factory ceiling, and he tells Charlie that Charlie will now be Willy Wonka's apprentice, and that one day the factory will be his. And in the book, Charlie, you know, he's like, oh, well, what about my family? Can they come with me? And Willy Wonka is like, of course, everybody can come here. And so they crash into the Bucket's house, and the grandparents in the bed, they just push the bed into the elevator. Everybody else just gets in, and then from there, they fly the elevator back to the factory, and they all live happily ever after. However, in the 2005 movie, it's a little different. So in the 2005 movie, they like crash down into the Bucket's home, and Willy Wonka tells him like, you've won the factory. And Charlie is like, well, can my family come too? And he's like, no, like you're never seeing your family again. And Charlie is like, well, in that case, I don't want it because my family is more valuable to me than your factory. And Wonka is just like very confused, and he leaves. And basically, long story short, we find out that Wonka was raised by a dentist who hated candy. And there is a line from this movie that my family quoted a lot where Christopher Lee says, candy is a waste of time. But then Wonka decides he wants to become a chocolatier, and this causes a rift between his father and him. And so then he leaves, and he has not talked to his father sense. And so that is why he is not attached to families, and he thinks that parents just tell you what to do and they just ruin your life. And so that is why he does not want Charlie's family coming with them. But then he tells Charlie this, and Charlie is like, I bet your dad really loves you and cares about you though, so you should go, see him again. So Charlie goes with Willy Wonka to reunite with his estranged father, and when they're there, they see that his father has cut out clippings about Wonka, so he has documented Wonka's success through the decades. And the two of them have a sweet moment, and they are reconciled. And after this, Willy Wonka decides that Charlie can bring his parents to the factory, and it ends happily ever after. And yeah, the background with Willy Wonka from the 2005 movie, this is not in the book, but it's interesting because I was reading, also Willy Wonka has these huge braces as a kid, and I read that Tim Burton had these intense braces as a child, and he had a falling out with his mother, and I don't know if it was about his career, but he was estranged from his mother for a very long time, and then when he reunited with her, he went to her wherever she lived, and she had clippings about his career, so she was documenting his success even though they weren't even talking at the time. And so Tim Burton included this in this movie just based on his own life. And I talked about this just recently with Catch Me If You Can, because Steven Spielberg did a very similar thing with that movie as well, where he incorporated his own life story into the story of Catch Me If You Can. And both of these instances remind me of a quote by Oscar Wilde, which reads, "Every portrait that is painted with feeling is a portrait of the artist, not the sitter." And so this goes for movies as well, of course. And yeah, I think that's just such a beautiful quote, and it's so true, right? Real art that, every portrait that is painted with feeling, movies that are made with feeling, they're a reflection of the director and the creator of that movie or that painting, And so yeah, I just think that's such a beautiful quote. And it's so true. But when it comes to movie versus movie, as I said, the 2005 movie follows the book more closely, aside from the fact that we have Wonka's backstory, which was not in the book. But even so, I prefer the 71 movie. The 71 movie is a musical, which some people like, some people don't. I will say, as far as the songs, they are all just fine, with the exception of Pure Imagination, which is just such an amazing song. It is so fantastic. I can and have listened to it repeatedly because it's just such an incredible song, and I love the way Gene Wilder sings it. It is a song that has been covered by other artists many times. A lot of people have sung this song. A lot of people with better voices than Gene Wilder have sung this song, but I prefer the way Gene Wilder sings it. And he's not the best singer in the world, but I think that's part of the appeal, or just something about the way he sings it. I just love it so much. But yeah, in the book and the 2005 movie and the 71 movie, the Oompa Loompas though do sing a song after each child, falls away. So there is music to some extent in all versions, but the 71 movie has a lot of different songs going on. And also the 2005 movie, there's a lot of CGI, and I feel that takes away from the magic of it, whereas the 71 movie, first of all, it's 1971. I don't know if CGI was a thing. And so I think the practical effects of this just make the magic feel so much more real and special, when they go in the room where everything is made of food, and that's when he sings Pure Imagination, and yeah, it just has that special feeling, more so because there is no CGI. I will say the 71 movie has that kind of infamous scene where they're on the boat in the Chocolate River and they go through a tunnel and they start seeing weird disturbing things on the tunnel walls, and then Wonka starts singing that song about there's no way to know where we're going and whatever, and everybody is super freaked out. And it's such a weird scene in that movie. And it's funny because out of the songs that are sung in the 71 movie, the only one whose lyrics come straight from the book is this song that Wonka sings in the tunnel. They're on the Chocolate River in the boat, and I think it got dark or something, and Wonka starts singing that, and they're okay, this is weird. But there are no weird images or anything. So in the 2005 movie, it just ends up being kind of a roller coaster ride. But yeah, in the 71 movie, this tunnel scene, the actors did not know that Gene Wilder was going to start singing that song. And so when he starts doing that, the actors really were unsettled, being what's going on right now? And so there's multiple scenes throughout this movie that the actors didn't know was going to happen. And so their reactions are somewhat real, which there is so much behind the scenes trivia on this movie. So I'm really not going to get into it at all. But if you have a particular piece of behind the scenes trivia that you love, share it down below in the comments. But yeah, another reason why I love the 71 movie is in the beginning when everybody is looking for the tickets, we get so many like scenes of people who are looking for the golden tickets. And we just see like how widespread this is where everybody wants it. Like we have a scene where a woman's husband is being held ransom, and then a part where a guy is trying to like get a computer to tell him where the tickets are. And then another part where a box of Wonka bars are being auctioned off, and then the Queen of England shows up. And then another scene where a guy's in a therapist's office talking to him about a dream about Wonka bars. And yeah, I just loved each of those scenes so much, and they are just so hilarious, and I loved it. But yeah, the 2005 movie, it is closer to the book, including the fact that it talks about how Willy Wonka got the Oompa Loompas, and we even get a flashback scene, and we learn how the Oompa Loompas are obsessed with the cocoa bean, which is from the book. And we also get the story from the book about how Willy Wonka made a castle out of chocolate for this prince, and then the castle melted, which is kind of a silly story, but I guess that's the point. Kids' stories are supposed to be silly. So yeah, between the two movies, I prefer the 1971. That is my favorite movie of the two. So then when it comes to book versus movie, which do I like better, the 71 movie or the book? I'm gonna say I like the 71 movie. I just think it like brings alive the magic of this story and the whimsy of it. And I love Gene Wilder in the role, even if he doesn't totally capture the Willy Wonka from the book. At this point, he's become so iconic, right? And then yeah, even though like some of the smaller details might not be the same, like the geese instead of the squirrels, or you know, like these little details that maybe aren't the same. Same with like Slugworth and the spy aspect and the fizzy lifting drinks. Ultimately, it does not change the overall message, right? The overall themes and the message, it all stays true to the book nonetheless. And so even though it makes changes, I honestly don't care because I still feel like it is a faithful adaptation. So yeah, even though I recommend the book and the 2005 movie out of all three, the 1971 Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory is the winner. But before I close out, I did want to talk about Roald Dahl because he did not like this adaptation. He was still alive at the time. And it's funny, how many times now have I done a book versus movie where the movie is like really good and is super popular, but that the author did not like it? And maybe there's some instances like with Stephen King and The Shining, over time he has warmed up to that movie, but so many authors just hated the adaptation, and Roald Dahl, like, he did not allow a sequel to be made because there is the book Charlie and the Great Glass Elevator, but he's like, no, I don't want anyone making that into a movie because he hated this one so much. And I'm just like, okay, I've never written a book, let alone had a book be adapted, but it's just kind of like, really? Like, are you just going to be so stubborn and just like hate this adaptation, even though it was really good? So I don't know. I feel like authors can just, also Roald Dahl just kind of seems like a guy who he just seems like a grumpy kind of guy. First of all, the way he wrote this book made it seem like he is someone who is very annoyed with children and disapproves of what the current generation is doing, like I said, with like the gum and the TV. And so in that sense, it's like, did he even like kids or was he just annoyed by them? And you have Charlie, who was the good kid, but also how often in Roald Dahl stories is the good kid someone who is like extremely poor or who is abused, or like it's almost like he thinks kids can't be good unless they go through like some huge tragedy or abuse or something difficult, because if they're raised in good households, they're going to be spoiled brats and rude and whatever. So yeah, I feel like he must have some weird views on children. But also I read the woman who played Veruca, her name is Julie Dawn Cole, and she met Roald Dahl, and she said that she remembers him as being a large, scary man. And then I did read an article about Roald Dahl, and I will link to it, but I'm going to quote part of it. So Patricia Neal was, his ex-wife. I talked about her actually when I covered HUD/A Horseman Passed By, because she was in HUD. And I even talked about her personally because before filming HUD, she had just lost her daughter. She and Roald Dahl, their daughter had died. And so she was still emotionally recovering from that when she did HUD. But anyway, a quote from this article reads, Patricia Neal describes her admiration for Dahl's determined nature and his resourceful intellect, but it is clear through her writing that she thought Dahl was a truly rude, arrogant, and disloyal husband who regularly belittled her during their marriage. The sentiment seemed to be shared by her family, as she describes how her mother thought he was the rudest thing alive. Dahl's controlling and self-contained nature is reconfirmed by his second daughter, Tessa Dahl. In her debut novel, Working for Love, which was released in 1989, Tessa's semi-autobiographical book describes her childhood bitterness after the family tragedies and her desperate longing for love. In a 2012 interview, she declared that Daddy gave joy to millions of children, but I was dying inside, accusing him of selfishness and egocentric behavior. And yeah, I know obviously like Patricia Neal was his ex-wife. They divorced, so clearly she will have a biased opinion of him. But yeah, there's also like articles that say that he was anti-Semitic as well. But yeah, anyway, no one's perfect. I get that. And I feel like every author has some things that are kind of like, I don't know about that, to varying degrees. But anyway, yeah. So the fact that he didn't like the Willy Wonka movie I just thought was interesting. But now, before I officially close, I wanted to talk about really quick in the 71 movie, how Charlie, his family, like Grandpa Joe, tells him like, you deserve to find the ticket more because you want it more than anybody else. And then Charlie has that thought too, where he's like, like I am different and I should find the ticket because I do want it more and I do care and I do love Willy Wonka so much. Like I should get the ticket. And this idea that just because like you want something the most makes you therefore entitled to get it, I just really dislike that. Because for one, I'm sure there were millions of other kids in the entire world who were also poor for one, but who also just cared so much, right? So don't act, Charlie, like you care more than anyone else, because I know there were thousands, millions of other kids who also cared a lot. But it makes me think of when I lived in California for the California lottery, they had a billboard that said, "May the best dream win." And it's so manipulative, which I get, all of marketing is manipulative, but it's implying that like, if you want it more than anyone else, then you are destined to win. When it's like, no, your personal situation and how much you want something has nothing to do with that. And so it's so manipulative to imply that if you want it bad enough and if your situations are dire enough, you are more likely to win. So anyway, I just don't like the messaging of the movie in that sense. But anyway, that wraps it up for Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Let me know your thoughts down below in the comments. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And if you want more Roald Dahl content, I have covered Matilda, so I will go ahead and link to that, which you can click on. And of course, we do have the new Wonka movie coming out in December with Timothée Chalamet. So like, I won't rush to go see that one, to be honest, but I am curious. So at some point I will watch it. And if you are watching this video after that movie has come out and you have seen the movie, definitely let me know what you thought of it down below in the comments. And thank you again for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye.